Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bear Central. And welcome V in the building. What's going on, V?
Nothing. It's early, so I'm having coffee and trying to get my life together.
So I figured with it being the first episode, we might as well talk about your Chicago Bears fandom, what got you into being a Bears fan, and then we'll get into talking about the additions so far in the offseason, the change to the front office, draft, and the free agency coming up. But first,
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bears Central.
how, when, and why did you become a Chicago Bears fan?
Well, that's an easy one. That is the hometown team. That's
Okay.
that's super easy. Not for my parents though. So, well, you and I share
Yeah.
that we're both military brats.
Yeah.
And so both of my parents from Texas and are diehard Cowboys fans, but my dad is like football is football at some point, and they were both stationed in Chicago. And so for the longest, he was like, "Well, if I'm gonna be here, then the least I could do is watch games." And so that just became our shared passion is going to games at Soldier Field. Chicago Bears games in the middle of the dead of winter in the snow, just me bundled up in a
Yeah.
snowsuit with like my eyes showing. We're going to games, and I think those are some of my earliest memories, and I think those are the best ones. I really enjoyed that one-on-one time, and so I think that is where that fandom came from, just a shared experience with my dad. And as I got older, it just kind of became a thing that I enjoy football, and the Bears team. That is the hometown team, and I'm
Mhm.
gonna stick by them regardless of how upsetting they are. A lot.
How many decades and decades and decades of frustration that we've dealt with it as Bears fans? It's ridiculous.
Well, yeah, at this point, I guess it's been my entire life. I mean,
Yeah.
realistically, when you think about it, the last Super Bowl was '85. We made a Super Bowl appearance in 2005. So, really, yeah, 30 years, 36,
Yeah.
35 years now. I just had a birthday, so 35 years.
That's crazy. It's crazy to have a team that's just like you said. The year I was born in '86, so the Bears haven't won a Super Bowl in my whole existence. Like you said, they've been in that one, but then it's like every time we have hope as Bears fans, it just never go. Like I had high hopes when we got Cutler. I was so excited when we got Cutler, and then yeah, about 3-4 years into that, I'm like, yeah, this isn't going anywhere.
He just didn't. Yeah, like I really, it looked promising with him. He looked like he
Mm,
had all the tools to be successful. We weren't in a place where I felt like the O line was in a good place where he wasn't going to be on his ass all the time, and it
yeah,
just fizzled. At some point, he just quit caring, and I don't think he ever really took command of the locker room like he should have as a
for sure.
QB. Like it seemed like he just was not, because they always say like they always say that anybody can be a manager, but not everybody can be a leader, right? And
Hmm.
so as a QB is a manager of a team of offense of sorts. And so it was like he can get out there and manage the offense, but nobody views him as a leader. And when you don't have that ability to inspire people, they just don't really fucking care. You don't care, they don't care. Like if you're
Yeah,
gonna show up to your job and half-ass it, why are we going to like give it our all? We can phone it in too. And that's essentially what happened. It just looked like
definitely.
everybody stopped caring.
That's definitely and then Trubisky. Don't even get me started on that. Like,
I'm not even sure what happened there or why it happened. And
yeah. So many questions there, but luckily we have a new era of Bears fandom coming in. We have a new general manager, new head coach, new quarterbacks coach, new O line. We got a whole new regime coming in. How excited are you about the new regime? What do you think is going to change? Were you a fan of the signings? Where did you sit with everything?
I think it was time to clean house, right? Like I think that we
Yeah,
had been better, in the past few years. There have been some bright spots, but I think this really gives us a chance to kind of maximize potential, especially with the team, right? Like I think at some point you have to look at it as we have all these pieces here. Why are we not getting over the hump, right? Because
for
even
sure.
really good teams can just kind of be just in the middle, right? Like you can always be in the middle of
Yeah,
the pack, and sometimes it does take shaking up the coaching and your defensive and offensive schemes to get over the hump, right? Because if you're doing the same thing and it's not getting you anywhere, then what are we paying these people for? So I think that really was a good look on our end. So I'm excited to see what happens. I was super excited because I think I remember that they were saying that I'm sorry, I have the hiccups.
You're fine.
But I remember saying that Foles was like super into like creating an offensive line. And I think that's something that we really need, especially with such a young quarterback. The ability to protect him, give him more time in the pocket so that he's able to really kind of get his reads is going to be like huge for us. So I'm really looking forward to see what he does with that.
Yeah, and then I'm excited too for our head coach, because one thing that always defines a good Bears team to great Bears teams are our defense. So to get a defensive minded head coach in, it really does fit in with the whole culture of the Chicago Bears, and I'm really excited to see what he does there. Because it's needed. Like you said, everything that you said, I agree with. Like, much like we saw with the Bull side of things, you sometimes you just have to completely clean house, restart, get a new culture started. And that's what we needed to do. And it's good that we have somebody too that even though he was cut from the Bears, right? He it's good to have somebody who was at once a Chicago Bear, I guess, just for storyline's sake, even though he never made the official roster. But I'm really excited for a change. I think that's ultimately what it is that just to have something new and to see what they do, to give them some years to see how they're going to continue to like build out this team is really exciting. And it worked for the Bulls. It works for a lot of franchises. Sometimes people just stagnate and you need to restart. And that's where the Bears were. Yeah. Yeah. So one thing I do like about what the NFL does differently than the NBA is that they have their free agency before the draft. So free agency starts on the 14th, I think, which is next Monday. So we're about a week away from that. Bulls. Bears' biggest needs are kind of I would say cornerback, O-line, wide receiver. What do you think?
I actually agree with you. I think those are the places we can maximize. I mean, it's not that what we have is bad, but certainly lacking, and we could use some help. Like I was saying, I think offensive line definitely would be a huge help, and then definitely wide receiver. If nothing else, those two. I mean, and there are some really interesting picks available, so really interesting free agents available. So I think this, even if it is not necessarily like long term strategic, I certainly think we can pick up some people on maybe 1-year contracts, 2-year contracts, and kind of do it and kind of get some talent in there as a stopgap until we have the draft picks to fully develop.
For sure. And you want to get that O-line together, especially when you have a young quarterback, because you want to keep them off their ass as much as possible. So that and having a wide receiver is going to help those two things. And I really hope the Bears focus on bringing in a vet and a young wide receiver to kind of have the two-prong there. And we need a really good center, I think, as well. So yeah, I can't wait to see. I know I said center, but like Cam Robinson is somebody from the Ravens that from the Jaguars that I'm really looking forward to, and I hope that the Bears can get. I think he's gettable. It just depends on what he's going to demand with this contract. Who are some of the people you'd like to see the Bears go after?
I was thinking Cam. I think as a backup and a possibility, I believe he played for Tampa Bay this past year. Okay. Ryan Jensen could be a good pickup at center for them.
That's a nice one.
So the last contract he had, he was the highest paid center in the league in 2018, but he's a bit older now. He'll be 31 this year. So I don't think that it's going to be I don't think it's going to be as hard to get him. I don't know that he's going to be able to command that type of money again. He didn't necessarily have a bad season, but if you're looking at free agency, trying to go somewhere where you have the best chance of winning, I think the Bears actually give him that with a relatively fresh start, new team, excellent quarterback, just young, but he also is a veteran, and he gives him some stability at center. And I think that actually be a very good pickup. It's a possibility.
Definitely. And then offensive guard, well, ours, I think we need to definitely keep James Daniels as well. I know he's expected to get to want a nice raise there, but I would really like to keep him in house, and I hope that the Bears, they look at somebody who's already been in their organization, and they say, okay, we're going to pay what it takes to keep him.
Let's hope.
I mean, he's still young. He's what, like 24, 25 years old. So
I mean, yeah, and that's the thing with these, younger, you want to keep the young members of your team. You want to keep them interesting. You want to keep them engaged. You want to pay them. And so I think it's one of those things where you kind of have to weigh your options here. But I think it would be excellent to kind of keep some of that core there. Like you clean house in the front office. I don't know if you want to clean house everywhere else. And so you certainly want to keep him and build around him, because he played well last year.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Any other free agents, whether it's offensive line, defense, or wide receiver that you want to kind of point out there and talk about specifically?
Let's see. Keem Hicks. So
Yeah.
he did not. I think sometimes durability is an issue with him, but he is just freakishly athletic. And so I would hate to see him go because a lot of times it's questions about durability. How healthy is he going to be? Because I think he missed like roughly 20 games over the past 3 years, right? And so it looked like kind of at points last season that they were just kind of done. He was done, Bears were done. So it is my hope with like a new regime in office that they really are able to kind of look at his value and talent, and it puts him kind of in a recharge position to want to stay. Because I think he is definitely a good addition. It's just been, injuries and, whatever else, and not feeling motivated to play. But I certainly think that he's good enough, and it would be a shame to see him go.
It definitely would. And like you said, you want to keep people in house that you can, especially if they have potential. It's unrealistic to say we can keep everybody. I mean, you don't want to run everybody back, because if you do run the whole entire roster back, you're going to end up maybe where you were before. So you do need to make some changes. But yeah, that's definitely a name I would like to see stay around as well.
What else you got?
All right, so wide receiver options. I'm gonna throw 3 of them out there. You tell me who sticks out to you, who you would want more than the others, and we'll talk about it from there. And so Cedric Wilson, Lamb, and Amari Cooper. I hate the Cowboys, so I'm going to say right now, like any former Cowboy, I get it. Cedric Wilson does have a lot of talent, but like I just hate the Cowboys. So if I can keep a former Cowboy off my team, I would very much like that. But
that was kind of my pick. If I had to have somebody, I would have him. He's young, he plays well. I think he would be a good addition. I mean, the Cowboys obviously aren't his potential over there. So I mean, come,
and I didn't mean,
come to the dark side. We have cookies.
But I think like what I'm seeing and what I'm reading a lot, it seems like there's mutual interest between Amari Cooper and the Bears a lot, and it seemed like that may be what's most likely. And if that ends up being, then I'm happy with that. I know this is going to be contrary, right? And I honestly think Amari Cooper is a bit overrated. Just a little bit. I'm not saying hugely overrated, but I think he's a bit overrated in my opinion.
And that's kind of why when you like the frown wasn't so much the first one as it was the last one. I was just kind of because I think it's like I see flashes of like, okay, I see why he's highly touted. I see why people speak so highly of him, and then the rest of the time it's like, okay. Is he okay? Is he gonna?
Maybe getting on a different team, maybe getting with a different coach, it does unlock something else with him. I can put my bias aside and say that, but it's just looking at him play, like you said, those flashes really make you think, oh, this guy has the potential to be deadly. And then other times you're just like, are we overrating those flashes? Like, it's just like and especially with wide receivers too, I think that it happens a lot because wide receivers, when they do something amazing, it stands out, right? It's going to get highlights. You're going to see it all over ESPN, things like that. But then it's like when it comes to trying to compete, right? And I know the Bears are a while from that, but I just see him as a guy that I think we'll look at right at the end of like whatever, if he signs for 3 years, whatever, that we'll look at the end of that contract and say, all right, he did some things here, but we're glad to see him go, which happens a lot with Bears signings as well. So
yeah, I mean, and I think that's it, right? Like I think it's just one of those things where is it going to, for the money that he's going to that he obviously is going to ask for, is it going to be worth it to us long term? Like, is it going to be worth us to spend that kind of money to get him there, knowing that if we're targeting him or he becomes one of our number one options at receiver, is he going to catch the ball? Is he going to run his routes correctly? Or are we going to be looking at somebody that we can't count on when the game's online and we're 4th and 3 and he's going to drop passes over the middle? That's kind of the concern.
For sure. All right, any other wide receivers you want to talk about specifically?
Let's see. Sorry, I took notes because
You're fine.
I can't remember anything. No. am old and had a birthday. Let's see. So, Michael Gallup, who also
Okay.
also of Cowboys fame. So I think it's interesting because I think he could be a good pickup. He won't command as much money as say as Amari Cooper, but he did play well, right? And for the Cowboys, were wide receiver heavy, right? Like they had a lot of targets for Dak. Obviously, he wasn't throwing the ball a lot of them, but he did have a lot of targets, and I think it was interesting because Michael Gallup played well, right? Like in that crowded offense of so many people that he had options to throw to. Like when he was getting targets, he was absolutely a standout when the ball was coming to him. So I think that he actually would be reliable. He averaged about 7 targets per game last year. I think honestly it would be a good pickup. Like it's not necessarily the sexiest, most jazzy pick, but I think that he's a sturdy player. I think that if he's in a position where he gets more targets, we would be pleasantly surprised. I think that he has the potential to be a standout. He's just in a place where he's like a third or fourth option right now. So that doesn't necessarily translate to being able to get as many catches as he possibly could. So I think in an offense like ours, where we're kind of starting over to some extent, it puts him in a position to be in a new offense, possibly kind of be in a place where he could get more targets. And I think we would be surprised by what he's able to do.
Okay. All right. I'm going to throw a name out there for you. And your reaction, I'm literally just throwing this out here because I want to see the reaction on your face. Odell Beckham Jr.
He's fine where he is. He just got there. He's fine. He doesn't like it there? He doesn't stay there?
I'm sorry. I couldn't help myself.
He doesn't like it?
Oh man, listen. I keep Odell Beckham Jr. far away from my team.
Just
like I feel like him, and I'm glad that Bears fans, there's not a lot of big conversation around him because I feel just like him that I did about Bulls fans talking about Jeremy Grant. Keep Odell Beckham off my team. I don't want to see that at all. I just like, no, thank you.
It's not fun. And that's the thing. I tell people, like, I am very happy that he was able to get his Super Bowl because I would be very honest with you. As far as it goes with like the Cleveland Browns and that whole situation with Baker Mayfield, I'm always rooting for everybody black unless you're fucking stupid. So, I mean, it really and truly, like that whole situation where Baker tried to make it seem like he was such a horrible, okay. But I think it's also one of those things like where it's a questions about, baby, are you going to run the correct route today or what's up? Like, so again, it's one of those things where when he's playing well and he's making catches, it's great. When he's not and he's dropping passes and again, just kind of making up routes, like it gets concerning. So no, he's good. If he's enjoying that, let him do that over there. He seems to be flourishing. Let him flourish there. That seems like a good fit. And what seems like a good fit over there is not probably a good fit for us. And so that's okay. Like that's not translating over here. I'm so sorry. I just don't believe that that's gonna. No.
Okay. Fair enough.
No.
One of the questions that is going, and I don't know how serious the talks are, but I know that it's a little bit of it. Khalil Mack, are the Bears? Do you want to see him come back? Do you want to see the Bears if they can trade him to kind of move up in the draft for their guy? What do you think happens with Mack this offseason?
I didn't mention him because I was hoping that they would not. I really like Khalil Mack, and he actually is one of my favorite Bears. And so so it's kind of shitty because on one hand, it's kind of like he's played well, but is there a possibility we could get somebody that could play better? But I hate to see him go. And that is, that is the nature of the beast, right? Like you can stay in one place forever, but many people don't, right? And I don't know that he's had necessarily the production in these past couple of seasons that would warrant that. So, if it means, getting rid of him, in lieu of picking up maybe some higher draft picks, I don't know that you pass up that offer. Truly. And that's especially,
and I love Khalil Mack. And one of the things that, again, as we talk about what's always something that identifies a good Bears team is our linebackers, right? We always have to have a standout linebacker. But I will say this, being objective and putting my attachment to Khalil Mack aside, is that he's 31 years old, right? Uh,
Right.
so and he just turned 31 in February. And as we possibly get younger, right, and we have a younger quarterback and our window is probably longer, if you're going to move someone, it kind of makes sense for it to be Khalil Mack. I just listen, I would love to see him retire a bull. Like a bear. That's just my personal thing. But as somebody who looks at what as the best way to like build a team and what's smartest for the team, it's like, okay, if they do it, if as long as it's the right deal, okay. Now, if they end up trading him and they move up only a few spots and really somebody that they could have got if they stayed the same, I'm gonna be pissed. But if it's a considerable move that's needed and they get some other assets back on top of moving up in the draft, okay, fairness, I can understand it.
Right. Like, I mean, and it really just is that he's older. Like, it really is not like he's not, it just at the end of the day, we have to do what's best long term. And unfortunately, if they're able to kind of get some other pieces that may be more viable to us long term, like, he's an old man in the grand scheme of things. He's not old age wise, but football wise, absolutely. And so, yeah, it's just kind of that window is small for him, whereas a team as a whole, we're kind of trending younger. And it just, he's going to be the old man out there. And I'm not saying he can't do it. Just saying that now's the time. If we're trying to unload him, this is probably our best window of opportunity.
Yeah, and unless the Bears,
it's going to be harder here in a couple of years.
yeah, unless the Bears feel like they can really put a team out next season that is going to really, really compete and possibly go on a deep postseason run, all right, you keep them. But if at all they're saying, hey, this year we just want to see what we have, we want to evaluate if we can make the playoffs. Absolutely, we're trying to do that, but we may not, right? And so it just really depends on how else they build out the rest of this, or what their vision is for what moves they are planning and think that they can make this off season. But I love Khalil Mack. He's been here since 2017, 18, and it's
truly a bright spot. So it just
yeah, it's just like it's and it's when he came in, it was one of those moves that it's like, this is a Bears player. It makes sense for him to be in this organization. So, that's just my thing I wanted to throw out there. Last thing, one of the last things before we go, draft targets. Is there anybody you would like to see them specifically target in the draft? Some of the names that have been mentioned: Chris Olave, who I believe played with Fields, and Christian Watson, both wide receivers, but they very well can go outside of that. It depends. Any particular names you want to look at?
I really have not thought about it much. I know that's insane. I just kind of I haven't thought about it, but like I said, like you said, I think the wide receiver targets make the most sense. You want young wide receivers, you want fresh legs, you want, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed people that are going to come in, they're going to want to study, they're going to want to learn the offense, they're going to want to play, they're going to go, they're going to want to earn their keep. And so I think that makes perfect sense to go after two wide receivers. Especially Chris Olaf, because, like I said, they played together. And I think that's helpful when you have somebody on the team that you've already kind of built a rapport with. You kind of already know their tendencies. They kind of know yours. So it's just kind of, it feels like you're able to kind of target them. But then it also, you kind of have an idea of like, okay, well, he knows if, I kind of drop back and I know he'll kind of, he'll go this way, he'll drop out. He knows. So I think it's one of those things where you also kind of a built-in safety net to some extent, not like a big one, but you kind of know like, okay, well, I know I can throw to this person. They're going to get it. I know if I throw it here, I can rely on them to do X, Y, Z. So I think that may be interesting to see them together.
For sure. And I think it makes sense as you're trying to build confidence in your quarterback and everything. As long as you can fix that O-line, any type of familiarity for him, if you can bring that in, you bring that in. So I this draft is just going to be really interesting to see what the Bears do. Here's what I want to ask you though, outside of the specific draft targets, what are your overall thoughts on Fields? What are your thoughts?
I like Fields. I do. I think that it is one of those things where we kind of are in an age where the expectations a lot of times are for quarterbacks to come out of college and be NFL ready and, play like rock stars. And, we're looking at kids that, have sometimes played in systems that are not nearly conducive to where they end up. we have a lot of them that end up on teams where there's just nobody for them to learn from because the people that were there before them were not great. So a lot of times you get drafted into a place where the expectation is you have to be on and you have to play, and there's no learning curve. And so for Justin Fields, I think that he has played well, all things considering. And so I just, as stupid as this may sound, it is my hope that Bears fans allow him some grace and room to grow, because this is going to be difficult for him as well, right? Like you were playing for somebody completely different last year. So we're looking at a new offense, we're looking at new coordinators, looking at a new coach. So this is going to take some learning curve for him. So it is my hope that we extend him some grace here. And as long as he's playing well, we understand that when you're building a young team, that sometimes, it is going to take time. And as long as we put the offensive line pieces in place to keep him off his ass, then I think that he has the potential to develop and play really well. I think that he's a good fit. But again, we are so used to people having to just kind of be thrown into the fire and being like, fuck it, you got to play now, that sometimes people need development. And it just, a lot of times we aren't willing to let them have that. And I think it's just very interesting how so many teams, like, they pick up these quarterbacks and they're expected to immediately play, and you don't have the other pieces for them to be successful. And so the Bears have been just kind of mid. And so he is a bright spot in the offense, but they have to put the other pieces there to make him successful.
Yeah. And I think too, like, people forget that not every quarterback is a star right away. For every person like Mahomes, Ben Roethlisberger, who had success very early on in the careers, there's an Aaron Rodgers, there's a Tom Brady that literally spent 2-3 years on the bench before they really were,
expected
they
to
were
play.
ready to contribute. Yeah.
And then they were able to learn. They were able to observe. They were able to ask questions. They had people in front of them that had some bit of success, and they were able to watch that. And, and then when they were called upon to play, they were in a position where they felt comfortable and confident they were able to deliver. And that's that's the part. That's what I was saying. People forget that that's not the case for everybody. It used to be you would draft a quarterback because you wanted to make sure that you had, some security in place, but also, as your quarterback aged, you wanted to make sure they had some backup. You were making sure you were kind of investing in the future of the team, but they also had somebody that was a decent quarterback or a great quarterback that they could learn from, which I think it's interesting, like with the Patriots, right? Or not yes. When they had, who did they have there after Tom Brady? He ran them out. Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like, Jimmy Garoppolo was very good, and it was just like much better than probably I think they wanted Tom Brady wanted him to be, which people always forget that. But I think that is ideally that's what you want, right? Like, Tom Brady is great, but you bring in like a Jimmy Garoppolo to sit under him and also be great. This is the time that he learns. It's not about you looking at the end of your career. It's about you focusing on the franchise as a whole. And that's why I thought that was crazy that they let him run that child out of town. And it's like,
man.
Like,
and then he left like what, 2 seasons later?
Yeah, and I was like, and I know we're talking about the Bears specifically, but that is the scenario, right? Like, you want to have a great quarterback or a good quarterback that you draft or pick up somebody in the offseason that they can sit and learn. The expectation is not for them to play right away. The expectation is for them to learn from somebody that is good.
For sure.
So that is, so I think people forget that that's what you should want. We've kind of moved away from that. And it's just like, whatever I can instantly have, it's an instant gratification for everybody now. So
for sure. Over or under 3 games Nick Foles plays next season for the Chicago Bears. Listen, I have an irrational hate for Foles. I hate him. He's technically still under contract. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Under.
Yeah. I hate Foles. Like, his face.
Why did we? It's very punchable. I don't know.
I was just about. He has a very punchable. Like, even when he smiles, it's like I really just want to knock 3 of your teeth out. Like, I just really want to punch you badly, sir. Like, I hate Nick Foles.
Yeah,
man.
I available whatever, but was he? Yeah. Was he the best available? Is that the best we could have done? something? Did we just kind of do something?
Oh,
sometimes you just be doing shit to see what happens. I feel like I know that's what it is. It just feels like we just did some shit to see what happens. It's like when you get like I used to get drunk like in college, and then I would sit on my couch at 3 a.m. and like call QVC and ask stupid questions. Like I'd be like, "Hey, are those pearls real?" And they'd be like, "They're $33, Miss No." You know what I mean? So it's like that. Like it's like the Bears got drunk and we're like, oh, that Nick Foles. Like, what is he?
I mean, granted, he was the third string quarterback, but it's just like the fact that he's like it's just some people that I just like. I don't want on my. I don't give a damn.
Here,
if literally his whole job was just to massage Justin Fields' shoulders in between possessions, like I don't want Nick Foles on my team. I don't want him on
Nick Foles massaging anybody's shoulders. Don't do that. Don't do that. That's very creepy. Just go warm up.
The Joe Biden massage.
Yeah, like don't do that. Just maybe go. I don't know. Maybe go help them inflate the balls or something. Don't do that. Count the water.
Oh, God.
Count the Gatorades. Don't do that. That's a lot.
Foles.
But yeah, I just like it's very much the equivalent of like drunkenly ordering like Thai food in the middle of at 3. I'm like it was there and it was mildly attractive. Like whatever. It's very one night standish 2 a.m. lights on in the club. So he's here now, I guess.
Fair enough. But that's it. V, you got anything else you want to talk about today?
No, I think we covered it all.
Yeah, we got gearing up. Free agency is right around the corner. I can't wait to see what the Bears do in free agency. I really think I think some things that we don't expect are going to happen, to be honest with you.
Yeah, so. and that's the thing. That's why it's so hard to kind of have this conversation now, because it's like with everybody being new, like before we could have kind of predicted some things just based on previous years, drafts, whatever. And so now it's just kind of like everything is bright and shiny and new. And so expectations are high, but I don't know what to expect. So, I'm hoping that things, kind of change and pick up some interesting stuff. And I think we will, but it's just kind of hard to predict. It's kind of hard to figure out what the game plan is going to be. And they've been very mum about it, other than saying, hey, defense, offensive line. And that's just kind of been the extent of the conversation. So it's hard to say. They're keeping it kind of quiet, but we'll see here shortly. So I think after we see what we pick up, it'll be more conversation to be had. So I'm really
definitely. Well, that's it. V, go ahead and give them your social media before we leave.
Don't look for me, please. No, I'm kidding. I don't want to be found. Don't look. No, kidding. So on Instagram and Twitter, it is at VJ_Burton. You can catch me there if you just want to chit chat about whatever. I'm willing to talk to you about most things. Don't DM me for anything. Please don't do that. I also do another podcast called Murder V Wrote. You can tweet me at that account. It's at Murder V Pod, VEEPOD. And that's the same on Instagram. I have a couple of shows coming out in the next couple of weeks on hiatus because I had a very grueling school schedule, and I'm so sorry, guys. But Mama had to get to these A's. So I'll be back in the next couple of weeks. Well, next week, actually. So I'm doing a podcast on the Cleveland Strangler, and then the next one will be on the Saturday Slasher, Coral Watts, and then Susan Powell. Okay. So the next 3 weeks are in the hole. So don't be mad at me, guys. You got 3 coming at you.
All right. Cool beans. Well, that's it. You guys can follow me at CEO Haize, at CEO HAIZE, because I have to be interested and spell my name weirdly. And that's it. You guys can also follow me at Chicago Bull Central, which is another podcast that I do. And then also tomorrow is my first day taking over Locked On Bulls. So be on the lookout for that as well. But that is it for me, for the guys.
He does 80 podcasts, guys. 80 podcasts. And he texts me like, hey, you want to do another one? And I was like, well, when are you going to have time to do an 89th podcast? And he was like, don't worry about it. For you, I'll make it happen.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.